Breaking news. Logan Paul's a dumbass, but at least he'll admit it.
I'm obviously a, fucking idiot for the most part.
Okay, so I'm gonna try not to be too harsh on Logan here because I realize he's like what 25 years old, so he's still got a lot of life to live, a lot of life experience. Because I don't think that Logan Paul has lived in the real world since he kind of rose in popularity at a very early age when he started making his viral videos at like 10 years old. So I don't think Logan Paul knows what it's like to actually live uh, amongst the rest of us, ordinary, normal human beings. But you probably all may have seen his rant about racism and anti-racism last year. Check it out.
It is not enough to be not racist. You have to be anti-racist.
Yes.
Condemn those who feign superiority because of the color of their skin. Friends, hold friends accountable. Hold your family accountable. Hold yourself accountable. And most importantly, we must hold our authorities accountable. Police officers, politicians, policymakers.
Okay, so not bad, right? I mean, some of that is pretty good as far as holding other people accountable. I think that's what we should do, especially in the face of racism. I think it's going to take a collective effort in order to sort of quell racial tensions, right? Although my idea of what, or I guess the reality of what racism looks like in America is quite different than what Logan Paul believes racism looks like in America. But for the most part, he's right. Okay, and Candace Owens on her show sort of dissected his rant here, dissected his video, and said the same thing. But then she went into to talk about why he's wrong in this next clip. Watch this.
If you're white, if you look like me, use your privilege. And for those who do not think white privilege exists, you are fucking blind. You are delusional and you are part of the problem. I can count on zero hands the amount of times that I have feared for my life at a routine traffic stop. That has never happened.
Okay, so, oh, one fist. Oh, wait, two. It's like he was looking at his cue cards, and the cue card said raise two fists for emphasis, but he only raised one and then looked again and was like, oh, shit, it's two. I gotta raise two fists for emphasis because this is really important, what I'm saying, even though I don't really understand what I'm saying because someone else wrote this for me. Uh, so, so Candace Owens, in her video that, or in her show that where she kind of dissected his logic here, I guess, or his lack of logic. She talks about how in the beginning he was doing pretty good, right? Don't be racist, speak up against those who are. Pretty basic common sense stuff. But then in the second part that you saw, he goes on to say, check your white privilege. If you look like me, then obviously you're privileged, and if you don't look like me, then you're not privileged. And so it's up to us whiteys who are privileged to stand up against the other whiteys who won't check their privilege and who are racist, and to stand up for people of color. Candace Owens makes a really good point in that Logan Paul assumes that all black people have had the exact same experience throughout their lives, that all black people have been victims of racism, that all black people have been victims of oppression and a systemically racist country, which is a fallacy. The idea of America being systemically racist. And he also assumes that because people may look like him and have the same color skin as he does, then they must have had the exact same experiences that he had growing up and also in his adult life. So that's Logan Paul being very short-sighted. So then I guess Logan Paul's video started to go viral again because of Candace Owens' response to it. And then Logan Paul with his buddies, they do another video responding to Candace's response.
I was getting canceled by white supremacists, I think, or people who or like follow that agenda for not being racist.
I said there's nothing more 2021 than a person of color, Candace Owens, calling out a white man for standing up for persons of color.
So there's nothing more 2021 in his opinion than a black person, a person of color, not agreeing with this fabricated narrative of people of color being oppressed and being victims of systemic racism in America. They can't understand it. they first of all, these guys, like, I don't know who this guy is. This the person you just heard talking, one of Logan Paul's buddies. I'm assuming that they drink the same bathwater, and that's why he's just as smart as Logan Paul is. But to ridicule and sort of mock Candace Owens for standing up for what she believes is right and what the rest of us know to be reality. Candace Owens is a smart, successful black woman in America. She's living proof that no one is standing in your way. As a person of color, there aren't a wall of white people saying, stop right there, don't go any further, we don't want you here, you know, you're not allowed to ascend above a certain level. That's not happening. But that's what they want you to believe. And people like this guy and Logan Paul are ridiculing and mocking people like Candace Owens, who are simply standing up and saying, no, I'm living proof that that's false. I'm living proof that there is another route, another path for the black community to take. But instead of, you know, because she's not buying into the narrative, right? She's not helping them push the agenda, then they're going to ridicule her and try and discredit her somehow.
Is she smart? Yes, she's very smart.
Stupid smart.
That's the thing.
And articulate.
And so the question always comes down to, what are these very smart people utilizing their smarts for?
I know that's
Who
right.
is she Who is she working for?
That's the good.
Who do you work
Who
for?
do you work for?
Who do you work for? These guys have such limited intellectual capacity between the three of them, that she's really smart, right? I mean, right? Like, who is she working for? She's not on our side, so I mean, whoa, where did she come from? Like, it's these guys have millions of followers. And it's insane that parents, be careful, because your child is most likely following Logan Paul on YouTube, and they are absorbing all of this nonsense that he's putting out here in these videos. They're not just watching the videos where he's dicking around out in the woods or whatever he does with his videos that go viral. But whenever he posts a video like this one and the one previous where he's ranting about anti-racism and teaching your kids that because of the color of their skin, their white skin, that they're privileged, and instilling in them this sense of, well, depending on how your child takes it, well, am I superior because I'm white? Am I more privileged because I'm white? That's the message that they're getting. The idea of white privilege. If you believe that you are more privileged because you're white, then you're a racist. I mean, you may not to some extent, maybe to some unconscious extent or subconscious extent, but know or acknowledge that you're a racist. But if you believe that you're white, that you are more privileged than the black person sitting next to you, you're a racist, and you're also a dumbass.
These issues that many white people or many people claim people of color are up against do not exist. It's of her belief that we are at a point where we are equal in stature.
Okay, so I don't think he meant to say what he actually said, because he used the word stature. Stature has two meanings. It means like your natural physical height, but it also means your importance or your reputation, which is determined through your achievement and your ability. Now, we are not all equal in that regard. We're not all equal in stature, because as we can see plainly with our own two eyes, there are some people who are very successful in this world, and then there are other people who are not. And some of those factors might be environmental. Some of them might be out of their control. But for the most part, the reason that there's such a disparity between successful people and not so successful people is their intellectual capacity, right? Their skill set, their merit, their competence, and essentially their willingness to get off their ass and do something with their lives. That is probably the single most contributing factor to all of this. So he actually, I guess, sort of unconsciously sent a different message than what he was trying to say. What he was trying to say is that Candace Owens doesn't believe that there are racial inequalities in the world today, or that America as an institution is marginalizing people of color intentionally and minority groups intentionally, and that someone like Candace Owens is not acknowledging that. In fact, she's doing the opposite. She's trying to show you the evidence that there is all of the evidence to the contrary. Okay, there is no evidence of systemic racism in America. There is evidence of racism, right, on an individual level. There are pockets of people throughout the country who believe in white supremacy. They believe because of the color of their skin that they are superior to their minority brothers and sisters. Okay, but that is not on a systemic level. That is not America. America doesn't have a separate constitution for people of color. Each individual state does not have a separate constitution or set of laws for people of color. It just doesn't exist. There are no policies or laws or rules or guidelines anywhere in America's institutions that say people of color have to be treated a different way, in a disparaging way that creates some sort of disparate impact. Discriminatory laws, they don't exist because they're illegal. Okay, I realize that since the ratification of the Constitution, it still took the United States a very long time to make progress in the way of racial equality. But we live in the year 2021, and since the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s, we've made tremendous strides on that front. And now people of color in the United States of America have never had it better than any other place in the world at any other time in the world. But we're being fed this fictitious narrative of systemic racism because you have people who simply don't want to take accountability for their lot in life, for their circumstances, for where they've ended up. They don't want to take accountability. They don't want to take responsibility for that. It's much easier to blame society and to pretend that the reason you are where you are, if you find yourself in unfortunate circumstances, in whatever hardship you're going through, that it's much easier to blame someone else, but not someone else specifically, because you have to end up proving that. It's much easier to blame the broader system so that you don't have to be held accountable for your poor choices. There's no doubt in my mind that Logan Paul grew up privileged. He probably didn't start out wealthy, but at 10 years old, he had a video camera that he was able to record his videos on. I didn't have a video camera when I was 10 years old. So, to some extent, Logan Paul was privileged. Okay? And it's not because of the color of his skin. That's just how it was. So I don't think Logan Paul, again, like I said in the video, or in the beginning of this video, Logan Paul has no idea what the real world is actually like. He hears what he hears and sees what he sees on the mainstream media news. And he's like, oh, I should weigh in on this because, I have a huge following and like I'm probably really smart, right? No, you're not smart. You shouldn't weigh in on stuff like this because you do have a huge following. And just like LeBron James, you have a responsibility to temper what you say because you have a tremendous influence over young people. And when you attempt to brainwash young kids into believing in the fallacy of white privilege and the fabricated, fictitious myth of systemic racism in America, you're doing more damage that way. The problem is, if you guys go and look up the original video if you want to, they talk about how Candace Owens is sort of undoing or unwiring progress. But the problem is they have no clue what they're talking about as far as progress goes. They believe that the country is making progress as far as, reparations for people of color and the black community and, sort of providing this relief to the racism and oppression that, the black community or other people of color are experiencing. And that's been the problem with the left all along, is they're constantly misdiagnosing or misidentifying what the problem is. And that's the very thing that Candace Owens is trying to do, is to say, guys, look, this isn't even the problem that you're focusing on. That doesn't exist. Okay? If racism exists on an individual level, then you have to deal with it on an individual level. All right? Deal with that particular person. But the other thing is people can't even they can't pinpoint, they can't show you. They want you to believe that racism exists, but whenever you ask for an example, specifically, okay, tell me the person who did it. Show me the institution that has a racist policy that is discriminatory towards people of color. They can't do it because it doesn't exist. You're just supposed to fall in line and you're supposed to believe them. And if you don't, then they try to discredit you and destroy your reputation. Okay, but they sort of sweepingly, with this broad accusation, just say everybody and everything is racist. And we're all just supposed to go, oh, okay, well, what should we do? What do I need to put in the work? Okay, well, what does that mean? I'm not racist. So what do you want me to do for you to help you since you're a victim? What should I do? Well, stand up and talk to your friends. I don't have any racist friends. I don't have any racist family members. So the problem, then we go around in circles. Okay, the people that try to listen to these people and believe what they have to say, they just keep spinning around in circles because it's not real. It doesn't exist. But what does exist is cultural issues. Okay, again, where people don't want to be held accountable for their own personal choices, and that's exactly what Candace Owens has tried to point out over the years: is that the black community, being 13%, comprising 13% of the population, is responsible for 50% of violent crimes. Okay, that's the reason they're going to jail disproportionately. That's the reason they're being arrested disproportionately. It's not because the cops are strolling down the street, minding their own business, and they see a black guy and they just throw him in the back of the car and take him to prison. That is a complete fairy tale. Okay? We have to stop coddling criminals. We have to stop coddling people who have no desire or no willpower to make something of themselves, but want to be handed something that everybody else has worked for, despite their unwillingness to put in the same amount of work for it. Okay, Logan Paul is not standing up for people of color. He's doing damage control so that he doesn't lose his followers. So in essence, he doesn't lose his business, his finances. Okay, that's all he was doing. So don't be fooled by it, kids. If you're listening, if there are any of Logan Paul's followers listening to this, do your own homework. Check into it yourself. Don't believe some successful social media influencer just because he's a successful social media influencer. Logan Paul is not smart. Okay? He doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to issues like this. He's lived probably in a gated community his entire life, and he's never been out into the actual real world darkness that exists out there. Okay? So, again, check, verify, do your homework, do your own research, come up with your own conclusions. This is the Officer Nate Show.